Hey guys and girls, Pokerton King here, back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about, are TCGs saturated? So this isn't a specific conversation about a specific card game or set. This is going to be about TCGs in general. So if you look at the last 5 years, obviously TCGs have grown massively. We've seen a lot of the rises in 2019, 2020, 2021 and last year as well. And already this year as well, we're already seeing a lot of growth as well within a lot of the card games. So when you talk about TCGs, the first three that come to mind are Pokemon, Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! And then of course you've got so many other card games like Flesh and Blood and Dragon Ball, Digimon, One Piece, Weiss Schwartz, and many others. But we've also got a lot of card games still coming out this year. So Lorcana is going to be coming out in August. There's a lot of hype around that game releasing. A lot of people were talking about that. We had Grand Archive come out this year. We've got Sorcery as well, which has just come out for most places now. I've got their Kickstarter. I'm still waiting for mine. I believe the UK and Europe are going to be getting it very soon. I think it's at the distribution hubs now. And then Fantasy Flight Games and Star Wars have announced a new TCG for next year. So this will be a brand new Star Wars card game. We've had a lot of iterations of Star Wars in card games before, but they've generally always been CCGs usually. So I know that Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast made a card game. We've had Decipher made a card game, and Fantasy Flight, who are also making this, also have had a card game. So we've had quite a few different versions of Star Wars TCGs, but CCGs in general. But this one is a actual TCG. So this is the first time that I believe they're going to be making an actual proper TCG. I know that they've made CCGs before, so they've got a lot of experience in making, in world building and in art and building games, but I don't think they have much experience in actual trading card games, and there is a difference between the two. So this is the topic of this video, really. Is it too much? There's a lot of card games right now, and it feels like a lot of people are collecting and playing a lot. People are obviously trying different ones. They want to get to feel for new card games coming out. There's also a lot of hype from collectors and investors. So there is a really good kind of mix of people that are interested in card games at the moment. But it does kind of feel like we're getting to a point where there are kind of too many card games here. So I know that might be blasphemy for some people and go, but you can't have too many card games. It's good competition. Now that is true, but when you look at the amount that's being printed by these card games versus, 5 years ago, even just 5 years ago, really, everything's been printed in larger volumes because the demand has gone up. But when you've got so many different card games now coming out, I mean, we had a big boom in card games in the early 2000s, and most of them did not last. They didn't last. Some of them lasted 12 months. Some of them lasted a little bit longer, but generally most of them didn't make it out. When you look at card games that have survived the test of time, you've got the big three that are kind of the main ones, and nothing's been able to break into that big three, ever. It's always been those big three. We've had a lot of card games in the past. Lord Decipher was making some really good card games. Upper Deck as well were making a lot of card games, but only none of those survived. And we've just got Pokemon, Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! So the top three for those has kind of changed over time. Some are more popular at certain years than others, but generally those three are the ones that when people think about trading card games, they think about those three. So, is it saturated? When you look at other markets in the collectible industry that have been saturated over the years and had massive crashes, the one that comes to mind for me is the comic book crash of the 90s, where you had a lot of people buying mass amounts of certain issues because they felt that it was going to be absolutely massive. The death of Superman, for instance, is one that I remember very, very vividly. I wasn't collecting comic books back then. I was only a kid. But I remember going to comic book stores as a kid, and I remember people talking about it, being around that kind of world, and people discussing it. And comic books crashed massively, and Marvel lost a lot of money. This is why Marvel had to sell a lot of their movie rights to other companies, because Marvel were in debt. Marvel were close to going bankrupt. Comic books in the 90s just crashed. A lot of comics weren't worth very much. Obviously, it was a good time if you were buying, but because it did retrace. It obviously took years to retrace, and comic books, you know, a lot healthier now than they were. You know, I've been collecting comic books for, I would say, 12, 13 years. I don't really collect them as much now, but I did have sort of a 10-year window where I was collecting a lot of Marvel and DC as well, and Dark Horse Comics and Image as well. So that's what I'm thinking with card games. It'll be interesting to see and hear what other people think, and also to see what actually happens here. Again, it's one of those videos where it is kind of speculating. It's done on an educated assumption and speculation, really. I've seen what's happened in other collectible industries, video games as well. Video games crashed as well. So, you know, in terms of like collecting as well. So I just think that there are a lot of card games, and be very careful. Obviously, if you're playing, you know, try as many card games as you can, because you might find one that you really enjoy. There are still communities for a lot of card games that are classed as dead card games. There are big groups on Facebook and Discord, and people still host their own tournaments as well. I know Lord of the Rings as well has still got a very good fan base out there, because I'm in a Discord and on the Facebook groups as well. That is a card game for me that I collected as a kid, and being able to kind of still enjoy it as an adult now is really fantastic. So it doesn't mean that the card game, you know, isn't going to have any value, anything. It just means that if you are more for the people that are collecting and investing, if you're looking at putting a lot of money into card games, be careful where you're putting your money in. Obviously, the established three are safe bets, really. I actually looked at a Excel spreadsheet of the last 10 years, and it was products that came out in 2012, 13 and 14 for Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, and looking at their value over time versus the SPY, and their percentage increases up till now. And Pokemon's return of investment was absolutely massive compared to anything else. A lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic products did increase, of course, but there were products that increased, you know, weren't in line with inflation when you look at inflation gone over the years. And some of the products in Magic have actually gone down since their release. More some of the decks, not just the actual boxes themselves. But yeah, it's an interesting topic. Let me know in the comments below what you think. These kind of debates and discussions is why I make these videos, really, because I kind of like to talk about something that maybe people aren't necessarily talking about. Obviously, again, similar to my risk management video that I did, that has done really well now. I think we're just under 700 views on that video. A lot of people really enjoyed that. I got a lot of good feedback and suggestions for future videos as well, which is great. I always welcome that. Again, at the end of the day, I have really only started making this kind of content this year. I have been involved in the TCG landscape for over 20 years now, but my knowledge has been kind of specific in card games. I generally have a broader knowledge of a lot of card games, but Pokemon has kind of been the one where that's been my most knowledgeable subject, and then a lot of random card games that are basically dead now. My experience in Magic is only of the last sort of 4 or 5 years, so I know that a lot of the people that are in Flesh and Blood are from OG Magic the Gathering. They still sometimes collect Magic, and they probably still have positions, but a lot of them did move a lot of their wealth to Flesh and Blood, and their knowledge of Magic the Gathering early and over the years is you know, very extensive. So I always welcome suggestions and feedback from anyone, but please comment, like, subscribe as always, and have a great day.